group formation and title selection and abstract submission. That means that proposal submissions. So I have seen almost all batches have submitted. 13 batches I have seen, and one more batch also they have submitted. So hereafter, so all of you, you can start working towards your term assignment. So since this course has lot of theoretical background is also required, what to do. Theory will give what to do. Practical knowledge base will give us how to implement what we studied in a theory. So the blend of both, it's actually is a good practice. But at the same time, throughout the semester, also you are having a parallel track. So in that perspective, if we see, we are having a 3 tracks parallelly. 3 threads are running parallelly. Theory, lab component, that's a weekly practice, and for end semester level to the semester level term projects. So all of you, please spend time. Please don't start working at the end of the okay, the review date already has been announced. So if you start working towards that, yes, 1 week before, if you start working, then surely you can do. If you are really into this, so only we can create the arrangements as a teachers, as a facilitator. We can give a guidelines. So it depends on the individuals as a team's involvement on learning that you can do lot wonders. No pain, no gain. So sacrifice your personal time towards your welfare of your, especially in the case of academics. So that's the point which I can emphasize here. Yeah. With this, I will start. Just a minute, I'm sharing that link. So we need to spend a lot theoretical perspective. So I will move faster. So my request to all students, you please parallelly have a look on the theory behind content available in the textbook. Only the essence content is being discussed in the class. Please recollect that, very important. Lot of theoretical background also given in the textbook. Majorly from the textbook and exercise and the back exercise and all, from there the quizzes and semester exam or midterm exams will be asked. So you can start preparing from that also. Now I'm sharing the screen. Today we are going to discuss the other new. Okay, in email I think we have discussed only one SMTP POP3. I will talk about 3. Yeah. So up to this we discussed a mail is being sent from the client to the server. So intermediately how the transaction is going on. Every day without this email current situations we cannot live. So if you want to establish your own email server, you always think in that perspective. Somebody have created something. You always please ask this question. Okay, how they have created? If I want to create the same thing for my own Gmail server, email server, what to do? There are some free email servers applications itself is available. If you want to be the, what is the difference between the computer science with the electronic students is that in computer science in general, they used to have a lab related to all these applications. So in the lab, they used to do some of the client server application development or many things will be there. Because of that, they will have some base knowledge. So they will start developing a lot of small applications by their own. So here especially in a computer communication or EC and all, majorly it's a combination of both. Electronics will be there, communication also should be there, but it's a good blend. But at the same time, when it comes for the practical aspects, need to have a more exposure on handling multiple tools. So what are the software applications are available to establish the mail server? So in Microsoft, there is a Exchange server is there available. We can download and we can install the Exchange server on our computer. We can create a 25 email ID by our own, like that. That is also possible. You just will explore that. So that's called SMTP, which already we have completed. If you want to a sample SMTP interaction, how normally it will happen. So this is server. From the server, this is client. The client and server, how it will transact. So this communication will happen. So 220 hamburg.edu, HELO, and all these transactions, you please then mail from. So the mail from the so on. So we are normally typing in the one application where that separate text box will be there. We used to type it. But when the content is going away from our computer, in this fashion, fashion only the things will move out, and how the transaction between client and server will happen. This is the way. So please explore that. Yeah. So they try SMTP interactions for yourself. The telnet server name. So enter hello mail from RCPT. These are all the commands related to the SMTP protocol. HELO hello, receipt, RCPT data quit. So you can see that RCPT number. That means the receiver number. Data, and after when the client says the data, okay, like this, content can be given in this fashion. Yeah, now I will move to the another module is called SMTP uses the persistent connections. SMTP requires a message like a header and body to be in the 7-bit ASCII. SMTP server. One of the server which I have mentioned is a Microsoft Exchange server. Uses the CLRF to determine the end of the message. So to end of the message, to identify the end of the message, where the message is end. So that it will detect it. Afterwards, it will assume that, oh, that one complete email is over. Yes. In comparison with the HTTP. HTTP is actually, it calls the pull type. SMTP is actually push type. its literal meaning is that pull means it will fetch always the information from the server. If why I am saying is that if the HTTP is a protocol, generally it will send a request, then it will receive the information like that. But SMTP in general, the protocol itself, simple mail transfer protocol, is under the category of a push, in the sense whenever the email comes, immediately that will be sent to the all the relevant or required clients. The pushing is initiated from the server. That server, it is not, that means the email server, it is not waiting for anybody's request. Whenever the email comes to so and so person, immediately that will be sent to that concerned client. So the server is always doing a pushing operations. That's the meaning. So both have a ASCII command, HTTP, each object encapsulated in its own response messages. Okay, these are all these general specifications. So mail message format. I think already I gave some outline. SMTP protocol for exchanging email. So this is a general template. As per the RFCT 222.822, the standard has been formulated. Yes, the header will have example to from subject. The different from SMTP mail from the RCPT number commands. So the body will have the. Normally we used to see their content in our email application, but when we see as an email application, it is a client convenience. But when it goes to the from the computer, when the data is passing out towards the server, then how the format should be. That's a point which we discussed. Mail access protocol. So there are other type of protocols also available under the subcategory of SMTP. SMTP, delivery, storage to receivers, servers. Delivery of the information and storage also is being maintained by the server. So this is a one category. The mail access protocol. How to access the mail? For example, now we are having a, there are three types of mail accessing data. MAP. So how to, already some client has sent a message, requested or sent an email. The email server is receiving. One email server, it is communicated to the another email server. From that email server, it is pushing the information to the client. The transaction is going on, but all the information, it is already available in the server. But whenever, for example, in our mobile phone, when we install the Gmail app, when we open it, immediately we can see something in on the inbox type. So how our mobile phone is receiving that? Always some sort of the communication is initiated like that. In the sense, it is not like a regular email request like that. In the sense, when we send an email, there will be a connection oriented. It will send a request, then the server will communicate like that. But here it's not. If any new update comes, immediately it will fetch that information. That's called a server is in a pushing mode. Our client app, which we have installed on our system, it's in a receiving information without sending any request. But our mobile phone and app will have the provision to receive the information. It will get update continuously. Sometimes we can see that it won't get updated, then it's automatically because of the memory issues. Then it will, when we open the app, during that time it will fetch all the information. That also will happen. So the three different types of mail access. How to access the email? There are three varieties. POP, Post Office Protocol. RFC is equal to 1939. So the authorization download. IMAP, Internet Mail Access Protocol. More features including a manipulation of stored message on the server. I will talk about that. HTTP, Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo. So what is the meaning? We are accessing the email not only by using the SMTP protocol, which we do normally in our through client line, the command line interface. There are HTTP in our Google browser. No? If you type it in a browser, Chrome browser or Firefox or Edge browser, in the address bar, we can type http:/gmail.com. If we type, we are getting the separate page. What is the meaning? The same Gmail, same email, which follows this general protocol of SMTP, can be accessed through a HTTP also. That's the meaning. So this is that. And IMAP and POP. What's the difference? I tell you. This is very important. Post office protocol. In post office, what happens when we send an email any mail through a post office or sending a registered post or whatever it may be, the data from the post office, they won't retain any information about only the from where what document came to whom actually it is being sent. Only that data may be available in a post office if it is a registered post. But the copy of the content, what the sender is sending, it won't be available in a post office. Like that, there is a protocol, it's called POP. If we are installing our system, from the server, all the informations can be downloaded on our local system. So in our computer, there is a separate app is called Outlook Express. Not Outlook Express, Outlook. That standalone Microsoft Outlook can be used for receiving an email of our either in Google or even in our college email ID. But in a college email ID, the POP protocol they are not permitting because the a lot of the official communication will be there. The data should not be deleted from the server. So what will happen in a POP? All data from the server will be downloaded to our local system. Then even if we don't have any internet connectivity, still we can access our email. Whatever the data is available, downloaded in our system, we can see that. And we can communicate it back. Whenever the net connectivity is coming, no, then immediately our the email client app like Outlook, it will send back the message. Through the email server, all the transaction will happen. But email server won't retain any of the or copy of the email content on the server, like how it is being maintained in a post office. That's why it's called a post office protocol. Okay, another one is called IMAP, Internet Mail Access Protocol. This is the thing which is normally used in our even our mobile phone. When we install the Outlook app, on the mobile phone, our college is providing all the mail transaction through IMAP only. So it means it will retain a copy of the content on the server, email server, and the partial content will be sent, partial in the sense the copy of the content will be pushed to the clients, email clients. So that's the meaning. So these are all the three different mail access protocol. This is the POP3 protocol, how it happens. The authorization phase. So because it has to ensure because it is going to take all the data from the server. There is a danger. In some time, in our device, the local computer, if the data, everything is got deleted, we won't be having any copy of that content. So that is another issue. But in some of the situation, all the data is being retained in our computer. Some of the critical informations, if you want to any secret communication through that, but it's not in the internet. There is no secret at all, to my knowledge. So somewhere that something can be easily seen by even in an app itself. It will give a suggestion. It means what? It is reading what I am typing. So depends on the situation. Another scenario for a POP3 is, for example, for 5 years of a data. Actually, in our university also we had a situation. There was earlier a mail server. It's called a Zimbra, Z-I-M-R-A, Zimbra. That email application server, email server, had some issues in the sense, the space issues. For 5 years, now I have joined here in Amrita 2008. From 2008 onwards, 13 years, this is 12 years gone. All 12 years of data, if you see, the data retained inside a server for a one particular user will be very huge. So the running cost for or maintaining the all this data in the main server, it's another problem. So if that is the situation, maximum of 1 GB or 10 GB memory space, or even a Gmail, no, they are giving a 15 GB as for a free account. If it goes beyond that, we have to pay for it. So like that, the spacing issues comes, then POP3 will be very helpful. Okay. So authorization phase. So then the client commands, no, the user password and the server response, it's either it's okay or not. Based on that, this transaction will happen. So these are all the transaction level process in the POP3 protocol. All this thing we can test it in your command line interface also. These are all the commands. Wherever things you see in a bold colored list, RETR, retrieved message by the number, DLE, delete, quit. All these are all the commands. So you can explore that. It's like this POP3 email and all. Many SMTP, even mail transfer protocol. For that itself, a lot of reference materials are available. You can follow that, but I cannot go for each and everything because it has a huge of content. Just I'm giving a gist for that. Depends on your interest, you can please proceed. Yeah. So POP3 server, you can see here. The server says, okay, POP3 server ready. User Bob. User is sending that, client is sending, the server is okay. Pass, hungry, password, this is a password, okay. User successfully logged on. The login process is over. After that, how? List 492. So it is listing the list message numbers, list of message numbers. List 1, 492, 498, like that. Retrieve 1, this is index. So retrieve 1. So when it is sending the message, client is saying, yes, retrieve 1. Because in our email we may have a number of messages. Okay, retrieve number 1, message 1 is contents, like that. Delete 1. Delete 1 means it may delete the information from the server. Once it is ready, reading the data from the information from the server, there won't be any copy of the content on the server. This is highly risky. We have to be very careful when we are installing. But for a test trial run, we can try that. That's all. So more POP3, download and delete. Yes, already I gave explanations for that. POP3 download and keep. So there are two modes, download and delete. In POP3 also there is provision. POP cannot reread the email if the changes are allowed. And another mode is also download and keep. We can represent another information saying that you read the data, but you don't delete. The advantage of this one is that the copy of the content will be available in server and client also. We can have the complete email information on our local system as a copy of that. So that's the plus for the POP3. But in IMAP, we cannot have, even though we may see that some of the emails are, we can see that is stored and temporarily in a mail buffer. That's the meaning. Okay, POP3 is a stateless across the session, stateless. Already we discussed about what is the meaning state and stateless. IMAP, it keeps all messages in one server at server. Already I gave explanations. Allows user to organize the message in folders. So this type of, now we can create a number of folder. This content is coming from this location. Like that, we can create an organization is possible. That is possible only in IMAP. Keeps user state across the session. What is the current state? What we do? Everything is being updated on that. If we make any settings changes on my mobile phone, that will get reflected in the environmental background image for and the visualization part. No, everything if we make no, accordingly the email server also will get reflected. So it is maintaining a current state. So names of the folder. Okay, I'm coming out. So with this, I will stop for the case of email. Now we will move to DNS. DNS is nothing but domain name server. Domain name system, domain name server, domain name service, in any way we can call. Domain name system. What is the meaning of the domain name system? So, for example, already we have discussed about how many different people are connected into the internet, how the conversation happens from one system to another system. All computers can interact through network. Whenever the networking comes, we need an IP address. But for each and every users, if we use the keyword of the IP address, for a computer's perspective, the IP address, reminding the IP address, it's not a deal. It's very easy because it has a number, it can easily understand. But as a human, so we cannot easily remember all the IP addresses for example, amrita.edu. If I want to access amrita.edu, the IP address which is given in telnet, no, sorry, in the VPN. So this is a global. So you can see the three different IP addresses over here. Have you noticed that? So as per to connect the VPN connectivity, we need to get this is IP address. All these three IP addresses are static IP address of our Amrita Vishwavidyapitham. So whenever if you type 14.139.167.130, just a minute, I will try for that. 14.139. Just a minute. 14.139, 187, 190. Um, 139.187.130. 187.130. Normally this IP address, if we type, if the provisions are there, if the university has given some provision, if somebody is typing this particular IP address, yeah, now actually it's too long to respond, it means that it is not responding. So with this, some other .index. Or some other link if it is given, immediately when I am typing www.amrita.edu, now I am typing this amrita.edu. This amrita.edu means I am typing some character, ASCII character. That ASCII character is being recognized by some intermediate application, which will recover the information about this particular website amrita.edu, where it is retained. So the amrita.edu is it is not the unique ID, but it is actually unique ID only. The URL wise it is unique, but this cannot be directly used to connect from one location to the another location. That means one system to the another system. So intermediately, the networking ID like in IP addresses can be used, must be used for that. So how to map it? So one IP address. So what is the corresponding IP address for this amrita.edu website? So that is being maintained by the domain name system. So the domain name system, which will maintain what is the IP address for each URL, uniform resource locator URL. One IP address can have multiple web address. It is possible, like the web hoster, the internet service provider, like that. Web hosting systems, like people are talking a GoDaddy in a TV. Also, we used to a lot of go for here. GoDaddy. It's own because it's in a even in a TV advertisement. These people are GoDaddy is an American publicly traded internet domain register. You see, internet domain register and web hosting company, headquarters in Arizona. So this is the company. So what they will do, they will have the DNS server, and they will provide the authorization for logging in or creating a email web page like this, amrita.edu. The same amrita.edu in the world, no one can have it. So they will maintain, they will ensure that the uniqueness of the URL. So each URL, whichever we type it in address bar, all are unique. Okay. So this is a overall goal. With this, we will proceed for a discussion. The people, many identifiers, and server socket name and passport. Okay, we will come to that. Internet host, the routers. So the host will have the IP addresses used for addressing the datagrams. Name, what is the name? The www.yahoo.com, used by the humans, used by human beings. So we can easily understand the English word, how to map between IP address and the name, and vice versa. So that is being maintained by the domain name server or domain name system. The domain name system is a distributed database implemented in a hierarchy of many name server. So name server. So it will check with the name server. Domain name server, it will, for example, through a GoDaddy, I want to create a gandhiraj.com something. If I want to create for my own personal website, for that, when I am applying through this GoDaddy people, what they will do, they will check in the name server if the same name, if anybody has the same domain name or not. So that's called a name server. Application layer protocol, the host name server communicate with the and resolve the naming issues. If there is the same name is available, then it will give a conflict. So then we have to make changes into other name. The very important is that if you want to retain this particular name to provide the service, no, every yearly basis, 1,500 rupees, like that, we have to pay for this DNS people. So that's the only thing which we have to, because they are maintaining a service for us. What are the services? The host name to IP address translation. Host name to IP address. From IP address to the host name, like that. Host aliasing, canonical and alias names. That means it is creating the alias. Alias in the sense is a duplicate. You have same host, sorry, IP address can have a multiple URL. Amrita.edu and Madras Institute of Technology, Amrita University, Anna University, IIT, Madras, like any institute, no? For each domain names, they separate. Sometimes all these things is being maintained in the same server, same IP address, something it may have, but it can have the different names for that. So it is being maintained in a separate server. That's why that's DNS is doing that. And mail server aliasing also possible. And load distribution. The replicated web servers. Replicated web servers means that many IP addresses correspond to one name. Many IP addresses corresponds to one name. So that is also possible. In the sense, sometimes when the results is being announced, if the same, especially to the level of in Anna University in Tamil Nadu, around 500 engineering colleges are there. When the result is being announced, if all over Tamil Nadu, around thousands of lakhs of people, they used to access the server. That time they may not, the server may not be in a position to respond it for everyone equally. So to avoid that issue, what they used to do, same content, if any request comes to that particular amrita.edu or annauniversity.edu, annauniv.edu, something, for a result page, immediately they might have made some arrangements, depends on the availability of the server. The other separate pages will be available. So from the outside when we see only one URL, but in the back end depends on the load. If the heavily loaded, one server is heavily loaded, automatically it can be transferred to the next server. But this is the opposite operation what we have discussed in the DNS earlier. To reduce the load, the server, the same server is being maintained as multiple copies into the, that's called the distributed system. The big data analytics actually is working based on this, big data. So Hadoop is one of the software is called Hadoop. So all of you must be aware of this. Hadoop is one of the pioneer in developing the big data. 1 TB of data, 10 TB of data. If you are having a huge of data, then how to distribute in one single location? It is not possible. So the Hadoop-like environment will create a separate distributed file system. Then whenever needed, it will consolidate everything, then it will give to the users. That's the way all YouTube and things are working. Facebook working based on this, and Twitter is working based on that. All are distributed systems. Why not to centralize the DNS? The single point of failure, this is the point, and the traffic volume and the distance centralized and maintenance issues will be there. If one system has a failure, so the total email, it won't be in an accessible position. So then what will they do? It's a system failure. So whatever the transaction, if anybody wants to do, no, based on the email access or any other server access, if the server gone, everything gone means nowadays we are not getting that type of problem. The server is not accessible, the server is failure, something like that. The reason is that the distributed file system is being maintained. Okay. A DNS, a distributed hierarchical database. There are root DNS server. Root DNS is the origin. Under that, .com DNS server, .org DNS server, .edu education related things, servers will be there. All commercial related things. So it will be routed to the DNS server. That's why whenever we get the even in a computer, location based, amrita.edu.in, if something is end with .in, that means that website is geographically located related to the India. So the searching for the domain name server or any other transaction, no, it can be easily maintained from the, it can be easily identified from the name itself. So we need not to do a lot of internal search to identify where the resources are available. We can reduce the search time, and the speed also can be improved a lot. So that's the meaning of that service. Like .com. Hope all of you are aware of that. Commercial related things, all websites can be created with the .com. Organization, like the social organizations, people, those who is a bigger institute, non-profit companies like that, industries or some service institutes, they can register under the .org. Education institutions, they can register that domain name like .edu. Amrita.edu is coming under this case. Amazon.in, Amazon.com. If you give that Amazon.com will give you the international website. Amazon.in will give you, for example, if you see here, you can see that. Sometimes, since we are inside the India, what will happen? Amazon.com, it is coming. You see here, so whatever the content which we see here, it's an international website. So it is not showing the information related to our geographical region in India. But if you type it Amazon.in, now you see here, the page, both are Amazon only. All these things are related to in our geographical locations. What are the style and what are the offers, the varieties of informations coming here, what is available in India, and especially in the currency also they used to follow in the Indian part. But if you go there, the currency will be normally in the form of US dollars or something. So that's the international website. Yeah. So in that way, you can see, you see here, there is a provision to choose the country also. Yeah. So all these things actually is being decided because of the DNS part. So how the processing is happening? The client wants IP for Amazon.com. First approximation, client queries root server. Query will come here. Root server to find the DNS server. Client queries .com. That means if that query has .com, then immediately the root DNS server, it will route that information to the .com server to get the Amazon.com DNS server. Client queries Amazon.com DNS server to get the IP address. From here, it will get the IP address. Yahoo.com will have the DNS server like that. Because since these people are Yahoo and they are having a lot of online businesses, they used to have the separate even DNS servers to increase the speed of the transaction. If the people wants to do the online transaction, there should not be any hurdles on accessing the data. For that, they used to have their own domain name server to increase the speed. Contacted by a local, the root name servers. This is a server which will, you see here in the continent waste. Just I will give you the contacted by the local name server that cannot resolve the name, which cannot be resolved. Then the root name server will identify, okay, from where actually it is coming. The contacts authoritative name server, if the name mapping not known, and gets mapping and returns mapping to the local name server. The 13 logical root name servers are available. 13 servers are there. That servers is being located in a different locations. Naming servers are there. You see here, these are the locations are given here. In Japan, the wide is Tokyo. 5 other sites are there, and RIPE, Net Node, Cogent, Maryland, ARL, VeriSign, NASA, Internet Software, Palo, VeriSign. So these are all the major root name servers. So when we access, especially through go.a, which I was mentioning, immediately it will go and verify any of the name server. It will communicate to all and it will check whether it is valid or not, like to that level. So the top level domain servers, authoritative servers. The responsible for COM, the top level domain servers, COM, org, net, edu, which I have mentioned over there, like especially for job sites, museums, and the top, all these things are and country related domains, UK, France, .jp, .in, like that. Network Solutions maintains the servers for individually .com. So that .com related things, and that is named as a top level domain server. Second is called authoritative naming servers, DNS servers. Organizations owns DNS server, providing authoritative host name and IP mappings of organizations named host, which already I told in the Amazon case like that. Can be maintained by the organization or service provider. Amrita also can have our own domain name server, or it can provide the service to the outside. That's called service provider. They will maintain it. Local DNS name server does not strictly belong to the hierarchy. Each ISP, the residential ISP company or university, has one called the default naming server. So you can see that in our default naming server, name server, when a host makes the DNS query is sent to its local DNS server normally. Has a local cache of recent name to address translation pairs. Whenever we are accessing now the local DNS server, which will retain all this information. Actually, in a Microsoft also, if you install Microsoft server, Microsoft Windows server operating system, that server operating system has the provision DNS option server. So that's called a local. If in our college also they used to retain a separate DNS server. So instead of going for outside to search everything, so the cache information will be there in the local, our college repository. If immediately it will search, earlier if somebody have attempted to access this one, that information there, it will be available in the local DNS. Then it will give it is resolving the corresponding IP address for that to search it. For searching itself, it is taking long time to access to the remote location. What is the IP address? Then it will be too much delay. But, there will be a lot delay between client and server access. To reduce that, that's the main motive of this. So DNS name resolution example. With this, I will stop for today's session. So how it happens? So requesting a host cis.poly.edu, local DNS server dns.poly.edu. So this is a local DNS server. It is sending the request to the root DNS server. Then it is responding back. If after getting a response, then TLD DNS server, from there it will get a response. Then if root DNS is giving the information, it is fine. Then it is the local DNS server which is connecting to the authoritative DNS server. It is responding for that. So what happens is that it will get the information, some information from this root server, some information from the DLS server, some information from the whether that user is authorized or not. Each and every transaction is being done by the local DNS server separately. Once it is done, then that connection will be over. Then the communication will happen between the server to the client. So this is the overall. And domain name resolution. The earlier is called iterated query. Iterated means first it will do here, so second you do that, third access like that. It's called a recursive occur. You see, from 1, 2, 3, 4, then the response will come here 5, 6, 7, 8. So puts a burden of the name resolution on contacted name server. Everybody will get a burden. So that is also the another way. The heavy load at the upper levels of a hierarchy. Like this, every member they used to access to the root DNS server. What will happen? The server will get a lot of load. So there may be a delay. So the iterated query level, this type of things will be relatively faster. DNS caching and updating records. So it will retain the information into the local system. Okay. About this DNS template and all, we will discuss in the tomorrow session. So with this, I will stop for today's class. Just a minute. So tomorrow we will discuss about the remaining part. Do you have any queries? Please let me know. So I'm sharing the link for attendance.